Pimlico, the place to be during a thrilling finish to the 148th Preakness Stakes, but tragedy spoils an otherwise joyous day in the winner's circle.
And eyes on more than just horses at Pimlico today. We hear from Governor Moore on the future of racing while a former Baltimore mayor assesses the state of the city.
And Baltimore's juvenile crime crisis showing no signs of slowing down. Surgeons at Shock Trauma open up about youth violence from their perspective.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
It's Mason Simmons putting on a show in the Preakness. Who's it going to be? It's going to be National Treasure.
A dramatic finish at Pimlico as National Treasure etches its name in history. Good evening. I'm Maxine Stryker.
I'm Vincent Hill. The 148th Preakness Stakes are in the books, a moment filled with treasure and tragedy for trainer Bob Baffert.
One of his horses finished in the winner's circle while another was euthanized on the track after injuring a jockey and itself just hours earlier. Baffert trying to process the day's events shortly after the final race.
When he got hurt, it's just the most sickening feeling a trainer can have. And so, you know, my concern was, is the jockey all right? And I was in contact with his agent, and as soon as I knew he was okay and sized, he called me up, telling me everything fine. The horse felt, if you don't know what happened, he felt good and all that.
Well, we'll have more on that in just a moment. We begin, though, with Mage's quest for the Triple Crown coming to an abrupt end this evening at Pimlico.
Yeah, Rocco DeSangro is here with how it all went down. Rocco.
Yeah, Vince, Maxine, while it was the smallest field the Preakness saw in decades, the race had the Kentucky Derby winner, a local, and the return of Bob Baffert after a 2-year ban due to a failed drug test from a previous horse he trained. Baffert's horse in Preakness 148, National Treasure. National Treasure, you saw it there, just got the job done in a thrilling finish, edging out Blazing Sevens by a head for the victory. The Preakness win marks Baffert's 8th, which breaks a tie with R. Wyndham Walden for the most all time.
To win 8, right now I'm not thinking about the 8 because hopefully I want to come back here and add to that, you know. And so, but I'm happy for just this horse doing what he did today. I mean, this horse brought us all out of just a horrible moment.
So while it was a day filled with victory and triumph for Bob Baffert, he did say that it brought them all out of a horrible moment. Vincent, Maxine.
All right, Rocco, thank you. National Treasure's triumph marked by tragedy for Bob Baffert. Earlier in the afternoon, having a meltdown, had to be euthanized on the track. It's another one of Baffert's horses getting injured during the 6th race of the day and throwing the jockey Luis Saez off its back. He's still at the hospital, but Baffert said he was fine in his post-game interview. The horses team says the injury was inoperable, and they said they had to put it down. A statement from the team says the loss will be felt across the entire horse racing community.
And Pimlico, not the only Maryland racetrack facing controversy. Laurel Park's track was shut down for a week last month, you remember, over safety concerns. 2 horses suffered deadly injuries in April, launching a Maryland Racing Commission investigation. They found necessary improvements were made to reopen the track safely for racing on the first weekend of May. And Governor Wes Moore at Pimlico this afternoon addressing horse safety across the state.
It's both the health and safety of the animals, and it's also the health and safety of the jockeys. And I know that this is something that it's not just Pimlico and Laurel that are dealing with this. There's challenges in parks all over the country. We do know that the rate and the challenge, the injury rate and also death rate of the horses has actually been declining. But we also know it's still not enough.
The governor also says he's committed to keeping horse racing alive and well in Maryland. A commission established in the most recent legislative session will help the state move forward with safer horse racing practices.
And the governor, not the only high-profile politician taking in the action this afternoon. I caught up with a former mayor of Baltimore to get her take on the state of the city and what's next for her. Inside Pimlico, a political who's who from the governor, Baltimore City State's attorney, the mayor, and a familiar face to City Hall.
I'm not a bettor.
As the horses make their way around the track, former Mayor Sheila Dixon making her way around the room.
It's a great opportunity to network and meet people you haven't seen in a while, and just, supporting the community in this area of Park Heights.
And while she says she's not a bettor, in her last race for mayor, the odds were extremely close.
3,145. 3 years ago, that was the only thing that kept you from moving on to be the mayor of Baltimore. So that means a lot of people here in the city had a lot of faith in you.
Even though I'm not the mayor now, I still get calls on issues that people have, and I'm the kind of person where if I can help, I'm going to help.
Over a decade after leaving office, she says there's work to be done in Baltimore City.
We've lost residents, but we have to get our schools in order. Crime has to get under control.
Dixon acknowledging the juvenile crime crisis as summer approaches.
We've seen record numbers of juveniles either shot and injured or shot and killed. Why do you think juvenile crime is at an all-time high, and what's the solution to that?
Some of the juveniles know what the laws are, that they're not going to be penalized, but we have to begin to send a different message, that they will be penalized for committing crimes, for carjacks, for robberies, for whatever is going on.
And as the races at Pimlico come to an end for the year, questions loom about Baltimore's other big race set to take place next year.
What's next for Sheila Dixon?
Right now I take one day at a time.
Well, no shortage of star power this afternoon as Ravens, both old and new, came out to Pimlico. Odell Beckham Jr., the newest receiver, taking in his first ever horse race, and Justin Tucker seems to find his way to the Preakness every year.
And I stood next to Odell, and we're about the same height, so Coach, put me in. And we want to see how you're celebrating the Preakness. Just go ahead and send your favorite photos through the Chime In app at foxbaltimore.com or through the WBFF app, and we'll be sharing some of our favorites later in the show.
Well, the race appeared to have gone off just in time. As you can see, dark clouds starting to form above Pimlico a few minutes later. Meteorologist Jasmine Lomax has a look at the rest of your weekend forecast.
Well, we are looking at a much nicer end to the weekend. We've got plenty of sunshine tomorrow, but today wasn't too bad. The rain held off for much of the day, and it actually ended up being a very warm day. So taking a look at the Preakness Almanac, today we reached 79, keeping us above average. Typically, for our Preaknesses, we're around 75. The low temperature is around 55. Nowhere close to the record high of 98 set back in the 60s, and the record low of 39 degrees. Today was actually pretty mild, and tomorrow will be the same way after a cold front passes over the region. We're still keeping track of a few showers moving across the state. The rain will gradually taper tonight, and then tomorrow it's back to dry weather. Coming up, I'll have a look at what to expect as the weekend ends and how long the dry pattern lasts in my full forecast. Back to you.
Turning now to violence overnight in Baltimore. Police say a 32-year-old man was killed in a shooting just after midnight. Police say he was shot in the chest along Pennsylvania Avenue and taken to the hospital where he later died. Just over 3 hours before, a 19-year-old was hurt as part of a double shooting. The status of the other person wounded is not yet known. Police are searching for suspects in both shootings.
And as summer approaches, there are fresh concerns about a spike in juvenile crime. It's why Mayor Brandon Scott is putting a youth curfew in place starting next weekend. Meanwhile, doctors on the front lines are speaking out on the influx of kids they've seen injured by gunfire this year.
We really should have normalized this.
For more than 2 decades, Dr. Thomas Scalea has been on the front lines of the crime crisis at Baltimore's shock trauma.
When something terrible happens, you go, well, I was only 2. And you go, wait a minute, that's crazy. That we think it's okay because only 2 kids got hurt this week or 2 anythings.
Scalea says a life of violence is seemingly just life for children growing up in Baltimore.
It's ingrained into the fabric of the city.
There's families who are dealing with this more than once. I think we've heard from you before. You've had to tell a mother more than one time.
Her second child, her only child, came in and died a year after her first child came in and died. It's crazy.
Dr. Stephen Zinn, director of the University of Maryland Children's Hospital, and Dr. Rebecca Carter, a leading pediatrician at the University of Maryland Medical System, echoing similar sentiments as they sat alongside Scalea for an interview with FOX45 this week, telling us they're seeing more kids than ever victims of gun violence.
every person living in Baltimore and the state of Maryland, regardless of how they feel about these issues, needs to recognize that we have an obligation and we have to start to make a difference, even if it's small steps.
I don't think there's such thing as a child being immune to violence. I think it affects how they view the world and the safety that they should be able to feel in their immediate surroundings, in their schools, in their homes. So I don't think any family truly becomes immune to it. But I think that unfortunately what we're seeing is a lot of kids do adjust and change what they do and how they interact with the world around them accordingly.
There's an emotional, psychological toll it's taking on these children and their families. How do you help them deal with those impacts that are definitely long-term?
That's where people can help. If you're passionate about mental health, suicide prevention, we need a lot more support in those areas to support the kids and the families of gun violence.
I think that children know when we're giving them advice that doesn't necessarily fit within their lived reality. And so we have to also work on issues like food insecurity and housing insecurity and so many of the larger upstream issues that families are dealing with that demonstrate how to support them, how to get them able to concentrate and focus in school so that they can succeed in other ways, so that turning towards violence or having to be in situations where violence is more likely to happen is less likely to be their lived reality.
Well, you can see my full conversation with shock trauma surgeon Dr. Scalea and the other doctors, Dr. Carter and Dr. Zinn, right now at foxbaltimore.com. You can also access the story by scanning the QR code on your screen.
Baltimore County Police say they're looking for a person who robbed an armored car earlier this morning in Randallstown. It happened along Liberty Road. Police say the suspect got away with the cash and then ran away. Anyone with information is asked to call Baltimore County detectives.
Anne Arundel County Police say a man was shot just before 3 p.m. Friday in Glen Burnie. It happened along Oakwood Road. Police say 3 suspects forced their way into a home, assaulting 2 people inside. One of the victims was shot and taken to the hospital. Police say the 3 suspects are in their early 20s.
A fire breaking out this morning at South Carroll High School in Sykesville. Firefighters quickly responded, putting the flames out in about 10 minutes. The cause of that fire is still under investigation, but it appears to be accidental.
Coming up, a rise of absenteeism in Baltimore schools, why experts feel some students may not be showing up for class.
And civil rights attorney Ben Crump discussing his lawsuit against Baltimore City Schools, while he says he's still committed to the cause.
And debt ceiling talks making progress after they were seemingly stuck in quicksand on Friday. President Biden addresses what could be next from across the globe.
As Baltimore struggles with the juvenile crime crisis, some are asking the school's role in protecting our kids.
But many students in Baltimore are not showing up for class. Fox 45's Taylor Stewart explains the rise in absenteeism.
We spoke to one educational expert who says the uptick in juvenile crime and absentee rates here in the city are no coincidence.
If they're not in school, where are they?
The Baltimore City Council is gearing up for a hearing on the effects of chronic absenteeism, following a Project Baltimore investigation that revealed absentee rates in the district have more than doubled from 2016 to 2022, with more than 58% of students marked chronically absent from the classroom.
I was a product of chronic absenteeism. I dropped out or was kicked out of 5 schools.
Dr. David Heber is the founder of Concentric Educational Solutions, turning his lived experience into a career that's placed him back on the streets.
We're working closely with the mayor's office with the Squeegee Initiative. We're actually patrolling the 25 corners 5 days a week, from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., trying to speak to students who are, or school-age children who are there on the corners, and then connecting them to the re-engagement center.
The record increase of empty desks is rising in tandem with the juvenile crime rates in Baltimore City. According to BPD data, juvenile homicides are up 67% year over year.
Causation or correlation, not really sure, but that's the point of the hearing.
There is a direct correlation. I'm not going to say necessarily causation, but students are disconnected, and it has become even more prevalent post-pandemic.
Dr. Heber says getting tens of thousands of students re-engaged in a classroom is no small challenge, and a lot of that starts at home.
This year in Baltimore City, we would have, by the end of the school year, we would have conducted almost 30,000 home visits across the city. And it's just the conversations that we're having with people, with students. They need to feel connected with an adult in the school.
Heber says when a student is chronically absent, they're far more likely to drop out. As the city council prepares to question school administrators about the district's drop in attendance, he says it's important they ask not only why students aren't attending, but also what the district plans to do to remove those barriers.
When we bring them back, is the school ready to do something with the mitigating factors that they've identified?
Taylor Stewart, Fox 45 News.
Well-known civil rights attorney Ben Crump, part of a lawsuit against Baltimore City Schools, claiming the city doesn't provide quality education for its students. The lawsuit comes as Project Baltimore uncovered 23 Baltimore City schools with 0 students proficient in math among those who were tested. This week, Crump is speaking to Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost about the struggle students face and why he's so committed to a lawsuit.
Oh, our children at least the basic quality education so they can have an opportunity at the American promise of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. But without a quality education, their future is so bleak from day one.
Is that why you joined the lawsuit in Baltimore City against the school system for a failing system?
I did, because we put all politics aside, we put all special interests aside, and we tried to focus on the children to say, let's make this about these young people and giving them the opportunity to be all they can be.
Tomorrow night at 10, hear more of Mackenzie's interview with Ben Crump about why he believes this Baltimore lawsuit could spark change in education nationwide. A complete 180 on debt ceiling talks picking back up Friday night after seemingly stalling out at the end of the week. House Republicans and White House officials blaming one another of negotiating in bad faith. President Biden is halfway around the world at the G7 summit, but he says he's confident a deal can be reached.
It goes in stages, and what happens is the first meetings weren't all that percussive. The second ones were. The third one was. And then what happens is the carriers go back to the principals and say, this is what we're thinking about. And then people put down new claims. I still believe we'll be able to avoid a default, and we'll get something decent done.
Biden says he's receiving regular updates from his debt ceiling negotiating team. The president is expected to reconvene with congressional leaders after he returns from Japan tomorrow.
Busloads of migrants arriving in New York paint a bleak picture of border security. Why the scene at border towns might tell a different story. More busloads of migrants arriving in New York from the southern border today. It's part of an ongoing effort from Texas Governor Greg Abbott, saying immigration is an American issue, not just in Texas. New York Mayor Eric Adams says the city is running out of space to house these migrants, now resorting to empty gymnasiums. Some of the suburban areas of New York City are trying to stop the overflow of migrants into their communities.
We've got no place to put them. To be able to humanely take care of these people in the rural areas, or where are we going to put them, in a barn or something? I mean, that's not right.
Asylum seekers now occupying half of New York City's hotel rooms, according to Mayor Eric Adams.
At the border itself, the number of illegal crossings is much lower than expected in the wake of Title 42. Encounters are running at about 4,000 a day, down from more than 10,000 a day during this surge. Governor Greg Abbott is hoping to get more tools. He's wanting to pass a bill that would make it a felony to come into Texas illegally and to operate a stash house like the one discovered earlier this week with 28 migrants in conditions described as, quote, deplorable. Border Patrol also rescued a family of 5 found in a drainage ditch.
It was a mostly nice day, and then the rain came in a little bit later on in the evening. We're still keeping track of showers on the HD radar. Now much of the rain is approaching the eastern shore. I'll let you know when we dry out around the state and what to expect for Sunday coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.